why don't we start on the end. Jim, introduce yourself and let everybody in the room know who you are and what your company does and what your area of expertise is. Just each of you give us an elevator speech to get things going.
Thank you, Steve. Can everybody hear? Yeah, thanks. I'm Jim Gettel. I lead the mergers and acquisitions practice for Schenck. We're, as Karen mentioned, a regional accounting firm with 8 offices in Wisconsin. And about half, maybe a little over half of our transactions come out of the Schenck client base, which tends to give us a bit of a different focus from a normal investment banking group in terms of working with companies throughout the life of the company on longer-term growth and value planning as a foundation for the transactional work that we do. We work with a variety of industries. We're industry generalists, again, largely because Schenck's client base has the full range of industry in Wisconsin. And our focus is generally on transaction sizes in the $3 to $40 million range. Again, driven a lot by Schenck's client base. We work on both buy-side and sell-side transactions. On the buy-side, we can handle the entire process, but we're often working with corporate development groups and providing whichever services they happen to need on a given transaction. So we may be employed for financial due diligence or helping with pricing or tax structures, or we may help with targeted strategic searches. On the sell side, we're generally focusing on helping our clients both make smooth transactions and maximize value. So on either side, we're working with companies in the same transaction size and same company type.
Scott?
Steve, thanks. I'm Scott Fiducci. My firm, Davis & Keelthau, is a 70-lawyer business law firm. We're headquartered here in Milwaukee. We've got 6 offices around the state. I chair our corporate transactional group. We represent acquirers and sellers, investors, and management in transactions. I spend much of my time doing that, and it's a privilege for me to be here today.
Thank you. Ken?
I knew I wasn't an expert. That's why they didn't give me a mic that would work. Windermere is a company that I founded to work with a constituency of successful entrepreneurs and business owners who have transitioned through ownership, through recapitalizations, to stay close to their wealth in their next stage of their life. We call it active stewardship. There's some stuff on the table that you can read about it. My goal is when Kevin transactions out of exact science that he would be part of our constituency as we can plan for his next life. So I'm here today to answer a few questions and welcome everyone to the forum.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. These panel discussions are intended to be live, candid, unscripted conversations in which the panelists share valuable information for all of you. So therefore, as we go along, feel free to jump in and amplify or comment on or expand upon what each of you says. And don't let me get in your way, stand in the way of some great information. So to begin with, I know there are many company owners out there who thought about selling their companies at the peak of the economic boom in about 2006 or so, but for various reasons did not pull the trigger. And then the Great Recession hit, and the values of all of our companies took a nosedive. Well, as Kevin mentioned earlier, the economy is coming back. It's not coming back as fast or as quickly as any of us would like, I'm sure, but it is moving the right direction. And I take note of the Windermere logo, which includes an Adirondack chair, the symbol of peace of mind. I think during the peak of the recession, the chair that most company owners might have been envisioning was an electric chair instead. But it is getting better now, isn't it? So the first thing I want to ask our panelists here today is now a good time to begin positioning a company to be sold, and if so, why? Jim, you want to start on the end?
Sure. I think there's a number of factors that make it a good time to think about selling at this point. As Kevin mentioned, we have a tremendous number of buyers in the market right now, and that's driven by the large cash positions of private equity groups in that $490 billion range, and also about $2 trillion on just U.S. corporate balance sheets. The financial buyers have been active because they've needed to get into the market and make new investments, and there's been a lot of competition there. The synergistic buyers are responding a little bit more slowly, but they are coming into the market as they feel like the economy is less risky and they can deploy some of that cash, also thinking that organic growth is likely to be relatively modest, and if they're going to make their growth targets, they're going to need to do some acquisitive growth. So overall, we're seeing a lot more buyers than sellers in the market at this point, and quality companies, companies that are doing reasonably well, are getting a lot of attention. We're seeing more people look at companies, and as a result, we're seeing the increases in multiples of earnings that Kevin was talking about. The numbers that he was showing were for the overall M&A market, which includes very large deals. In the lower middle market, the $10 to $25 million sale price range. For 2010, we saw EBITDA multiples in the 5.4 time range on average. And so that tells us the normal range for that size is a 4 to 6 times multiple. Smaller the company, the lower the multiple in general. So a 5.4 range is getting into the upper average range for transactions. And so it is a good time to sell. Of course, we have seller hesitancy for, I think, a number of reasons. One is everybody's been told for 3 years it's a terrible time to sell. And this news is just getting out that people are getting pretty good multiples for their company. Another is, although a number of our clients may have had among their best earning years, they still aren't really back to the sales levels that they had come to expect. And they're feeling like, even though EBITDA is very good, that sales are going to come back. I don't know how reasonable it is to expect that in the new normal, so that's a question for sellers to ask. But there's a lot of opportunity now and a lot of people looking for companies.
Scott, what are you seeing out there?
Steve, I agree with Jim. I think now is a good time. You've got the attributes that Jim mentioned. In addition, I think the Great Recession also took out a lot of weak competitors. So the companies that are left in their particular industries have gotten stronger. And as we've gotten deeper into the recovery, that has helped to drive up multiples too. We've also got a pretty favorable tax climate right now, at least for the next year and a half or so. I think that'll drive activity as well.
Ken?
These guys are the experts, but I would suggest that the interest rates, 10-year bonds at 3.15 make it very, very attractive for borrowers to go about getting their equity, so they can pay a pretty high discount rate for that trail of cash flow, because interest rates at these levels are very, very low by historical standards.
For the people in the room who are hearing this, hearing that the multiples are rising and that their buyers outnumber sellers, and they're thinking, you know what, it's time to kick this into gear. I need to go about creating an exit plan for myself from my company. When they get back to the office today, what is the very first thing that they can do when they get back to the office to put things into motion? Are there a couple of things that they can just go back to the office and immediately today put some things into motion? Do any of you have any suggestions for that?
Well, I think there's a number of questions if you're thinking about selling in the next period of time to start asking. One is to start with a benchmark sense of where you are right now in terms of value. So what is the value of my company? From that, you can look at what's the net after tax, after debt value that I get out of my company, and then you can ask the question, is this where I need to be in terms of retirement to get to? And if it's not, then you're probably looking at a growth strategy, which might be an acquisition rather than a sale, or getting that dose of reality. The other thing from there then is to look at what are things that I can do to improve the value of my company. Is it in as good a condition as it could be for sale? Is it prepared for the transition? And start asking about the value drivers and whether you're really going to get the kind of value out of it that it could generate.
I would add, there are lots of things that companies can do depending on the particular company. We represent a lot of privately held companies who rely heavily on the founder of the company. As private companies know, to increase the value of the company, particularly when you're talking to a financial buyer, they look at the quality of the management team. You really need to take a hard look at your management team, make sure that it's robust, you've got talent, because if it's going to be an outright sale as opposed to a recapitalization, or even in a recapitalization, the management company is going to be looked at by the buyer, outside of a strategic, perhaps, buyer. That's a critical thing, I think, for driving value.